Woo! Alright folks, Casual Dad here again, and it's getting exciting. We're smack in the middle of the ladder season with, I believe, was it 17 days left to go? 16 days left to go. And Terra is filling up. I think the last time I looked at this on a video, there were around 100 people in Terra. Now we're up to almost 400, and people are ramping up to where their trophy count's much higher, and so you're seeing much more competitive decks at the mid-level. So, and just taking another look at that, again, your top 4 faction total trophy counts is what actually adds up to your total trophy count, and where your ranking is in the ladder and the total. So I've got my Orcs, my Eldari, my Servants of the Emperor, my Space Marines. The way I've always done this is I'll get to a set criteria. So in this case, I want to get to 3k trophies per faction, and then leave it there, and then play the next faction. So Orc and Eldari are done. I may play another game with them on this video, but we'll try to skip ahead of that. So I need to get my Servants of the Emperor up to 3k. So I'm going to play as Greyfax. And we'll see how badly this goes, and if it goes really badly, I'll go ahead and switch early. But I wanted to kind of redeem myself a little bit, because I wanted to show that Greyfax isn't unbeatable. I am hoping that we see Greyfax lose here. Okay, that's not the best start. It is Helbrecht, who I think is one of the most improved warlords of the ladder season, but he's only got 1,700 trophies. So I may need to play a couple games here to ramp this up a bit. And the reason I get really excited about the end of the season is I really enjoy the tactical aspect of this game, and it's just not terribly interesting until you get to matches that are actually difficult. And I lost a handful, I think, on videos, but you know, some of those were just flat-out bad matchups. It wasn't like a strategic play or anything. And of course, you are playing against people's decks, but they're run by AI, so there's a limit to how tactical they can be sometimes. But, well, that may actually go more difficult than I thought. But the AI can play some decks very, very well. And Helbrecht is one of those that's pretty straightforward, where it's just a melee-based one. Just to summarize his ability, whenever one of his friendly cards kills an enemy card in melee, it then gives a flat, I think, what is it, 15% buff? 15% buff to all friendly attacks, and it stacks. So any single card in that lineup can have any number of those bonuses. So if you don't remove Helbrecht cards quickly, they can really mess up your deck real quick and become just totally overwhelming. And he himself is legendary, and a lot of the best cards that go with that deck are legendary, so they all just gained a bunch of secondary traits. Woof. You can already see that ramping up a little bit. It's not so bad so far, and he's only got one more drop left, but still, I just kind of wanted to highlight how powerful that can be. So let's see, I think I got him. But the other thing too is Helbrecht himself has pretty excellent stats, gets the bonus himself, and comes on the board both with Inspire to give an additional flat buff to all attacks, and then also has Furious Charge, depending on what level he is. Yeah, level 4 will have it. So he's going to come on the board and immediately attack, which could get a kill and then give the cards, or the other surviving cards, an additional melee buff. In this case, I got him pretty good. So yeah, that trophy count was pretty telling. You could tell pretty much right off the bat that this wasn't going to be the scariest deck, but we can try a couple others. There are a couple warlords I want to see too, because when we're discussing the current state of the ladder, I'd also like to do a little bit of a meta talk about what is going on. I did that with Helbrecht just now, but Helbrecht is a relatively unchanged aside from the abilities of the cards for the season, so while he's still very powerful, it's not the main change. The biggest thing I want to talk about is there's a change in the timing of abilities. So now there's a whole activation window. I'll see if I can find any cards that do this, because that really nerfed a couple warlords that were very, very powerful, and I want to see some live examples of that here. That's perfect. Okay, so this is a perfect example. I'm going to pause for a second. So Medicay is a trait that used to apply as soon as a card was played, it would automatically trigger the ability, and in that case it would heal cards on the board. So it would add plus 20% or plus a percent based on the level of the trait to the starting wounds of friendly cards deployed. So it used to be you drop that card, it would play immediately. And so the AI often drops a Medicae card as its first drop, which is terrible because there's no other cards on the board to heal. So a Medicae before should be your last drop. So they changed it so that when Medicae drops, it doesn't actually trigger until the end of deployment. So I noticed that pretty early. So this would have been a terrible drop. So he would have healed himself, he would have healed himself, so it would just have healed the healers, and really not been a very helpful play. And that's not unusual to see the AI do that. And then drop that guy who doesn't need healers either. So I noticed that about Medicae pretty early, and that's actually it's a really good buff to AI decks, especially Tolmaron decks that tend to have a lot of that healing that was almost always wasted in those decks played by an AI because it did what you just saw. Played the Medicaes first with nothing to heal. And even this, he's just feeding me the cards that are utility cards later, so this is just bad play by the AI. Let's see if I can finish this one quickly and get on to something more interesting. But a couple things about that timing window. It also applies to Scout, which is that ready where a card plays and then it just readies and gives you an attack bonus for its chosen bonus stat. And because of that, that's actually a nerf to several major warlords. So Zagstruk, the Orc, used to be if a card readies, it attacks in melee, and it used to be able to do that mid-deployment. So you could play a card and it could hit another card at an angle if there was nothing across from it, because that triggered before deployment was complete. And I'll probably play a Zagstruk deck in a moment just so I can show you what I mean. It also is a nerf to Lelith Hesperax, who's my personal favorite Eldari warlord, because she has a lot of cards that rely on doing damage when they drop. And if they do damage when they drop, if they get a kill doing damage when they drop, they will automatically return to your hand, which saves them from extra damage and can keep them from getting hit back, and is a really powerful ability. But now that Medicae is delayed, if you play a Medicae card and then play a card, and the follow-up card gets a kill before Medicae triggers, it goes back to your hand and doesn't get the hit point boost. So that's actually a pretty nasty buff to her, or a nasty debuff to her. And some of the cards in Lelith decks got secondary traits, so I haven't lost yet. Let's keep cranking through until I do. They gain secondary traits, but those secondary traits also trigger after shots. So like I'm actually going to play Lelith to show this one to you. But so for example, the Crimson Hunter will fire a shot when it's deployed. It also has outflank, so it can steal boosts from your opponent's bars and then give them to your bars. But because of the timing now, shots fired happen first, so the card will get the kill and never even trigger its outflank if it does get a kill. I gotta say, I'm still pretty much totally fine with Lelith getting nerfed. She's redonkulously powerful, and I still expect to get to like 3,600 trophies with Eldari with her, even with the nerfs, because they are minor relative to her outright power. And this is the third deck in a row that's under 2k trophies, so this is not the matchup I promised. I will probably switch this up. This is one thing about Greyfax in particular. She tends to get favorable matchups because of the reasons I mentioned in my Greyfax breakdown, where she runs partial decks that only have, that according to whatever it's using to dictate matchmaking, reads it as low card count and low cost decks. So it rates them as lower power than they really are because of her ability giving that flat buff to all stats. Which is funny. I can only imagine trying to matchmake that, or set the thing to matchmake where it's like, here's what you do for everyone, but for this warlord it's totally different. So it's not surprising that the matchmaking is a little wonky with her, which really is probably the biggest problem with Greyfax, is that she's not read correctly by the AI that's trying to match everyone up. It's not that she's an insanely powerful warlord, of course not. But yeah, so we're trying to crank out a couple games. I want to get to some more challenging ones, because the things that I really love about this game are when you get to the upper ranks, like late season, late Terra, where you really get those games where timing and positioning matter a ton, which is why the warlords I keep talking about with those timing and positioning are so good. But you really can't tell that if you're winning favorable games that you're already kind of supposed to win. And also, frankly, the game is just less interesting until you get to the really difficult matches. and where you can see cards that are higher leveled, so you get to see all their abilities in full display. Ooh, okay, 66. All right. But yeah, I'm getting the progression. I'm still almost to 3k with Servants of the Emperor. So, mission accomplished, but not the video it's hoping to show. So I'll still play a little bit. I don't want this video to get too long, so I won't get too crazy, but I still have a little bit in here. Boop. And this again is my Greyfax deck that's all the heavy psychers. Still has about a 42% buff from her ability. She herself is very frightening. It's just such a strong warlord. But, on that same note, she's not my most powerful Servants of the Emperor warlord. So before I switch to another faction, I may actually switch to Creed to show you how that one looks. And I've been tweaking that deck a little bit this week, so you can kind of see some of the thought process there as well. This is huge. We've been looking at those secondary traits a little bit in some of my other videos. Anva, powerful warlord all the time, did fairly well, but him getting shields as a secondary trait is so good and a giant improvement to him. And I'm somewhat pleased to see that I was right to call it, that he's going to make a significant splash. I've seen him a lot in the Terra competitive ladder, where I really didn't in previous seasons. You'd come up against him once in a while, but it was really, really matchup dependent whether or not he was a threat at all. But with shields, it just takes enough longer to take him down, that if that was a really scary, higher leveled Anva deck, it would be much more challenging than that was. Alright, so let's switch it up. Let's do something and see if I can get a little scary here. I'm going to try one more game with Greyfax, because these are going really, really quickly, and I want to see if I can get a bad matchup with Greyfax. So I keep promising y'all I'm going to do it, and it hasn't happened yet. And even this one, the biggest thing about Akaran is that extra health, so it's hard to kill him because you have to kill his cards twice, but this deck is full of area effect psychic damage that'll clean those up very easily. We'll go here, what do you got? And especially this one at least is a 2.5k trophy deck, so there's that. So it might actually be scarier than I'm expecting here, we'll see. I'm already not seeing the typical loadout, so I haven't seen... So this guy is, you don't see him very often, and he's only trait rank 2, which is pretty low level for that. You do see this taunt guy, he's the cheapest taunt card in Space Marine, so you see him a lot, just that 14 cost taunt, because taunt is incredibly valuable. So I totally understand why he's in a lot of decks. So seeing him is never a surprise. Seeing him either, he's also one of the cheapest cards and has Fear, another really powerful durability ability. So what you're seeing is just kind of all the cards you'd expect to see in a deck that's padding itself. So it's got a couple really expensive pieces, and then it's got some of the most efficient, cheaper pieces backing it up. This guy's still a little bit of an odd choice. But it really depends on which power pieces are in here. If I don't see Tigurius or Njal, I'll be a little bit surprised, but it'll make more sense why this guy's in here. I have to see the other cards in the deck. Okay, more Fear. Alright. Also a really good one. Also still cheap. So whatever those last two cards in there are, aside from Akaran himself, they're going to be very, very punchy. Or this guy's just playing really well with a very low... Okay. Alright. Maybe this guy's just a new player, has managed to do very well with all starting cards. Because all of these are cards you'd expect every player to have, but there's got to be something scary in this. And that guy only had shield rank 2? How did this guy get to 2.7k trophies? That's nuts. But there is a thing. So with the seasons, if you play early in the season and you play really, really aggressively, you can end up with enough favorable matchups that you do just crank up. But he had to play just Space Marines that entire time. And that's so there are waves in the season. First week, it's very quiet. You can really progress very comfortably and very quickly. Into the second and third week, it gets a little bit more challenging. That's where we're hitting now, so it's good. And then in the final week, it just gets crazy. If you're an upper-ranked player, you're playing up against some really, really scary stuff, which is, I will definitely show that. But I kind of wanted to do a mid-season one, too, just to demonstrate the progression. So he's got this guy in here. So it's a pretty aggressive melee Akaran deck that's not being played well by AI, but I'm still very impressed that this guy got this deck up to 2.5k. Because it is not the kind of deck I would expect with that kind of power rating. But hey, we are getting matched against scarier decks, so maybe we'll get to see something real scary in a minute here. I keep saying that. I keep promising. Even my own brother was heckling me the other day because I said, this Warlord isn't unbeatable, and then I proceeded to not lose a single game with her. I swear, Greyfax is not unbeatable. I could beat Greyfax all the time. A ton of players do. It's just about the matchups. I'm just going to punch him. There's the sassy move. I could have hit him with Psychic and easily killed him, but, you know, a little melee to mix it up. Alright, one more game with Greyfax. I promise, then I'll switch to a different Warlord just to go ahead and show how that looks. And I want to show like an actual decent game where deployment matters. So far I've just been kind of throwing whatever made sense, or whatever I felt like onto the board wherever it goes. Alright, 2.3 trophies with Mozrog. Mozrog is one of the most powerful warlords in the game. His ability anytime, okay, level 6 is not far from mine. Anytime one of his cards does a melee attack, it automatically regains some of its health. It's a percent of its starting health, 10% of its base wounds. So if it's a big beefy card or a card with shields where it doesn't take damage for a while, they can really rack up an insane amount of health. And those two are relatively cheap. I expect to see some Enrage cards. Okay, interesting choice. The best cards in a Mozrog deck are the really high hit point Orc cards that also have Berserk, so they can heal and also be buffing their damage as they're playing these games. Those tend to be smaller decks that have just a couple really powerful cards in them and then some filler. This is not totally out of the realm. This is about the kind of deck I would expect to see with some minor quirks, excuse me. It's pretty unusual to see this guy in there, although he is really good with the ability and has the benefit of having some extra ranged attack. And he still gets the benefit of that healing. Like, look at how much his health has gone up since we started this game. And that's largely because I wasn't hitting him, as he dropped the Medicae, but then also was getting the melee buffs. But this is my three weakest cards on the board right now, so I should be able to get through this. And then let's hope he's got something scary in there. And I think that Mozrog specifically is exactly why they ended up giving Greyfax that big game hunter as her additional trait, so that she does extra damage to cards that are over 40 points. Mozrog himself is 48, just barely over that. Well, that's a bummer. This is one where... yeah, and that healing is particularly good against a enemy that you kill, because if you kill it, it doesn't hit you back, so it's just straight healing instead of taking any damage in return. Let's go ahead and do this. This is risky, because I've got both my area effect blasters. They do a lot of extra damage that way, but that's multiple times where a Berserk card can generate extra attack power. And so after these two are gone, we should see a full board of his scariest stuff. And this is a very risky position to be in, because I don't, depending on how powerful... Okay, well, that's not terribly scary. Alright, fine. So one scary card. Okay. I am unconcerned. This guy right here, the Black Death, the Death Dread, is a absolute perfect card to include in a Mozrog deck. Because you can already see that sucker was hitting me with 400 health, he's already got over 100 attack, and he just ramps up every time he takes damage. He gets additional power. So you'll see both of my area effects go off and not deal him a significant amount of damage, but buff his attack. So he just gained almost 20 attack, only lost a fraction of his health. I can see if I can burn him down, and the fear on this guy should definitely make him less of a threat, even as he bumps up. Yeah, showed you already. But this is still... not nothing. And then I'll get Mozrog himself on the board in a second here, so I've got that Inspire. That'll help me burn these cards down. So I've got that big Game Hunter, I think I've ranked 2, yeah, so my level 7. And I got that Inspire on, let's see how this will do. Okay, I was going to see if I could do melee to kind of poach this guy on the left, because if that guy clears, and he's going to, if that guy does clear out my Inquisitor, no, he probably won't. The area effect next turn should wipe him out. If he were to kill my Inquisitor, this would be a much closer match. And you can see that Black Death over there is definitely getting close to clearing out my Kulexis, but I don't think he's going to do it. Bloop. Greyfax, totally not unbeatable, I swear. So that's 284, and again, you can click that, and before you double-click, you can preview how much damage you're going to hit for, so that's lethal. Okay, and that's our 3k, so we... And now the whole deal is I'll play... I know I said that was my last Greyfax match, so I'm going to play one more Servants of the Emperor match with a different deck, just so you can see it, and so I can see some more complex matches. Because Greyfax was not terribly complicated. I'm going to show off a little bit about why Creed, Ursakar Creed, is such a powerful warlord. And this is with my Creed is only level 4. But his ability, anytime a friendly card dies, every other card that's deployed on the board will return to my hand at the end of that turn. So hopefully, ooh, in a 3k deck right off the bat. Artemis, brutal. Okay, I asked and you shall receive. I've got shields. First thing I want to do, so I'm against Artemis, so I want to play low hit point cards so they're impacted the least by his ability. And I wanted to play poison because I see shields. And to take down a shielded card this tough quickly, ooh, that's a bummer. I do want to play... And so that Njal is one I want to take down quickly, so I'm going to go ahead and hit him with my most powerful card. Especially now that that was the final card deployed, I don't have to worry about him deploying any other cards or triggering his ability to deal that 20% random base. Because if this guy starts taking 20% of his health, that hurts real quick. So I think I'm about to lose this taunt card, which is a bummer, but will also bounce him back to my hand immediately. Or will bounce the other 2 cards back to my hand immediately, which is nice. And we'll see how powerful that taunt is. If this doesn't kill him, that's actually kind of unfortunate, because then Njal's area effect attack will immediately kill him, and then both my tank and my poison guy are like, yeah, okay. If he does melee, which he should. Psychic, interesting. So that saved my poison guy, who will now return to my hand at the end of his turn. So I would call that a mistake. Well played, AI. I think a human might have done the same thing, but if he'd done melee, he should have been able to hit my tank pretty dang hard, and also probably kill my poison guy there. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this guy off, and try to take out the fear guy over here. And so you can see, one of the really powerful things about dropping a card back to your hand is that when you redeploy it, it gets its on-deploy ability again. So this thing has just a crazy high ranged attack stat, and to be able to just get a free attack whenever it launches, I should comfortably kill Njal, and then be able to kill this guy to his left as well. And you do also want to make sure that you have a steady stream of ablative cards, weaker cards that will die before your power cards do, so that you can keep using that redeploy. And you can only redeploy twice, so my tank has already returned to my hand once, it's only going to return to my hand one more time. So I need to be very careful where I put it the next time I play it, assuming it survives the next couple rounds. I could get unlucky and it could just die here. And there's definitely some lag in this game. I've probably been playing too much too quickly and made the server mad. Sorry about that. And so you notice this positioning here too. So my tank normally has enough attack to take this guy out by himself, but I'm debuffed. So I'm hoping that the combination... See, even those two by itself would have been 94. It wouldn't have been enough. So I put this guy to the left with his barrage, so he can do that little extra damage to take out this fear card. Sphere cards can be very difficult to remove, and I want to make sure I take that down while I have a good shot on it. So otherwise I'll have to put something directly across from him, which will slow it down a lot. The alternative was to put my poison card in front of him, which would probably cost me that poison card, but would pretty much guarantee he would die fairly quickly, because fear has no impact on poison. And the fear I keep talking about, it's this, where any opposing card has their attacks roughly halved, which makes a huge difference in a really powerful attack. And this is a bummer. I've got 2 of my power cards on the board who are really going to get hit hard by that ability. I may just lose my tank outright here, which is a risk. Artemis is a great matchup for Creed. As in, Artemis has a huge advantage taking this down. Now that target acquired is good because I was probably going to lose the tank anyway. That protects my other 2 cards and gives me the minimum loss to get a bounce back. Maybe, unless he does enough melee that he kills both that and my... and he won't also kill my Endless guy. And by Endless I mean this symbol here. When this guy dies, a second copy of him will come into play. And how close to maximum power that other card is depends on the rank of Endless, and he's almost max rank, so it comes back with almost his full starting health. And I'm still looking at... still looking at the taunt guy there. Got my area effect Psyker. You'll recognize him from the last deck, only a whole lot less scary because he's not in a... Ooh, that's a good drop. Because he's not in a Greyfax deck. And Creed is incredibly powerful because of that redeploy, because he gets to reuse his abilities multiple times. But the single most powerful thing about both Creed and Lelith is just the ability to redeploy your cards. There is no more powerful ability in this game. You have to have the cards to back it up, and it is challenging to play, but it's just being able to reposition is absolutely massive. Nice. So this is good and bad. So what I'm about to do is probably wipe him. But if I do that... Well, I'm not going to wipe that guy. A wipe is good and bad. Oh no, I'll bounce my cards back to my hand. Because when he redeploys, I'll get hit with Artemis's ability again and take a bunch of free damage. So sweet. So there you just saw Creed's board was wiped. I didn't have to worry about taking any return fire. That is, in a nutshell, why Creed is scary. Ooh, speaking of scary. And it's his turn, so I have to be a little careful here when I'm deploying, because whatever I deploy is going to take some hits. So I want my poison guy to hit that regen guy to counteract it. So, because regen just gains health, but it's the exact same value as poison. So rank 3 poison counters rank 3 regen. I don't want that guy over there cranking up hit points, because he could be a real problem piece for me. The other thing here, too, is that at the end of his turn, he's probably going to do melee. At the end of his turn, this guy's going to take poison and die, and then his final card is going to play. And the cards I've seen so far haven't been super terrifying, so I'm still expecting a power card in the end there. So he's going to deploy one more card before Artemis himself. Okay, yeah, that's not what you want. Oof. And that very nearly killed my, yeah, that's not, I'll do that. So I still have some cards in my deck, I still have some tricks to play, so I want to go ahead and pull Artemis himself. That's a risky play, because it could probably kill my tank outright, which will probably lose me my Psyker. Good, okay. So I did not lose my Psyker, that would have been the worst case scenario, and these two will get bounce, so I'll get a chance to play a little bit, differently here. Go ahead and pop him here, and shields regenerate too. So he has trait 3 shields, he didn't lose all of them, and so he will get those back. And this is going to be kind of a weird choice. So I could go ranged, which will really only benefit these 2 cards, but it'll let me poison Artemis. I can go melee, which will hit everything, and that's actually a good play. So that's going to hit Artemis, it'll poison him and do significant damage, and it's going to kill this guy on the left to give me a wing that I can use, which is great. So I still have this poison on my left, and with Artemis himself poisoned, he's not as much of a threat. And you saw that the shield guy bounced back, but the other guy didn't because he's already bounced twice. He's taking poison damage, it should be relatively easy to finish him off. And that's a little obnoxious. It's going to be a bounce I didn't necessarily need. And that's the thing. So that's actually a counter to Creed. Focus down his power pieces first. Or you can also just try to bounce his cards as much as possible so that they stay put and stop bouncing back. What you don't want to do is play into his ability by killing the taunt and endless cards first, so that the power cards get to replay multiple times. Those are the two biggest weaknesses of Creed, is having his power pieces taken out or having his sacrificial cards ignored. And Creed, the Warlord himself, is terrible. So if you get him on the board, your chances of winning are much higher. He also will bounce if you kill another card before you kill him, but it's not. Like Creed himself, let me show you his stats, he's not good. At maximum, you're talking 165 health, which is squishy, barely any melee. He's got a little more ranged, but not. That's max level. He is not a scary warlord. So if you get him on the board, if you have a headhunter warlord that can take someone down head-to-head, this guy is your primary target. So that was Creed. So I promised you some losses, so I may have to try a more challenging deck. I'm going to go ahead and play Lelith real quick. These have been going quickly. I know that's outside of my usual range, because I do have Eldari already at 3k trophies. But again, she's going to be my power piece. I expect to get her up to around 3,600 trophies. Hopefully these games have been going quickly enough that I'm keeping your attention and this isn't too boring. But I did want to highlight a couple things about the abilities I mentioned before. So I'm still matched against a 2.2 trophy deck, so this is different than what I was seeing earlier. So here, right here, I'll drop this guy. In the past, that would have Medicaid right away, and he would have been a terrible first drop. But we'll do this. That's a risky play. I don't remember how much he actually does on the landing, but we will see. I also don't particularly want to lose him right away. Lelith has the opposite of Creed's ability, where if one of your cards gets a kill... Okay, didn't quite kill him. Alright. So I did get both the outflank to debuff his attacks, but then his scout triggered to give his buff back. So your entire hand doesn't return at once, which is in some ways better. Ooh. It's in some ways better because you can really control where you deploy and what. So the cards that you get to bounce only bounce kind of when you want them to. So Lelith is just better than Creed. Like, I would say significantly. Wow, my shield's already down. This guy has shields 3, so to see him without any shields is crazy. But that's because this guy gained the secondary trait of Furious Charge, which I have made great use of with my own. So I'm just kind of dancing around. I'm trying to minimize the damage I take on each card, and then picking squishy targets to take them down, but then also to choose exactly which cards I'm bouncing. So if I lose this guy, that'd be a real bummer, especially because I want him against some of the late game power pieces that are going to come up. I'll want something that can take a hit up against some of the buffed up pieces that Zephyrblade's going to bring out, but that trade is probably worth it. Ooh, and they're still not dead. Wow. Ooh. And it's his turn. So I really want to bounce my healer back to my hand, but I just don't have any squishy targets. This is an unusually durable Zephyr-Blade deck. Usually they're pretty squishy. And so you have a relatively easy time, because Zephyr-Blade's ability gives every single card in his deck a flat bonus to attack damage. A flat bonus to attack damage. A little gutsy here, we'll see how this goes. For every card that dies. So usually you see a fair number of cheaper cards in a Zephyr-Blade deck. You know what, the safe play is actually to go ahead and pull Zephyr-Blade himself. We're going to go ahead and do that. I won't get too crazy here. And there's his outflank triggering, and there's my shot. I see your outflank, and I raise you an outflank. This will probably kill... yeah. This is going to kill both of my weaker cards, but I will poison that Crimson Hunter, and I will hit this guy real hard over here, which will make it easier for one of my other cards to mop up. This can be a really challenging matchup. One of the things that Lelith struggles against is a deck that bursts hard and fast enough that it can actually kill your cards. So I have to watch out for that. She's got 171. He's not going to one-shot mine. And we'll go ahead and taunt just in case. She also has the same limit where a card can only bounce twice, so you want to be careful with that mid and late game where you're like, oh yeah, this card's going to bounce, and then it doesn't. You don't want to get caught off guard with that. But you can just see how getting to reuse those abilities is so good. And even so, I still cut it pretty close with only 2 health remaining on these guys. A total of 5 between both cards. Whenever possible, Honorable Joust. Lelith gets the kill. Boom. So there's a Lelith Hesperax deck. She is a monster. Again, lives on kind of a razor's edge. She also only has a melee attack herself. If she gets pulled, that's very risky. I really recommend going heavy ranged like you saw there, but mixing in a little melee just so you have it. Because sometimes you want to get those kills with melee cards. The Life Thief, my healer, and this guy get really good melee. These two are really just in here kind of to tank damage just in case and fill out the deck. Shields to absorb damage and is super powerful on redeploy and gives me some psychic defense because it does damage back if someone hits me with psychic. But the real key pieces in this, I mean, it's the Solitaire. That melee attack is just amazing. And especially now that he does it on the drop, he can drop, kill a card, and come back to your hand, which really lets you put his death blow in an ideal spot. So you can use him, get a bunch of melee attacks out of him with that base 90 attack, get his Furious Charge multiple times, and then put him in a spot to die where it's going to do a ton of damage to the enemy team. Like, it's a fantastic card. But really, it's these two are kind of the linchpin of the deck. So if I lose both of those, that gets to be a much, much closer game real quick. I'll play one more of those, and then I will also play one... I'll play 2 games with Orcs as well. I expect to lose at least one of those, if not both. And I hope this isn't getting too long for you guys, but I'll go pretty quickly here. I'm honestly still hoping to lose. I had some really tight matches this morning and was hoping to show you some closer games, but these are all the 2.3 trophy games. That last one was reasonably close, and then one against that Artemis deck, that was a pretty scary match. But these others... Seeing Canoness, she's a Servants of the Emperor Warlord here. She's a pretty great one to show off because whenever a friendly card of hers dies, a random card that's still on the board gets a free melee attack back. So you'll see a lot of taunts in here, you'll see a lot of endless. So she can quickly rack up some pretty nasty melee attacks. I'm going to pop this guy in here. It's a little early, but it doesn't usually do that much utility later. One of these days, I'm actually going to kill with that bird and get it redeployed. Should just be a moment of pride. Kodiaz is just such a good card. That area effect blast is so powerful that you're gonna see it in most Servants Warlord decks somewhere at some point. You'll see either that guy or the cheaper Navigator in the purple robe, both of whom are in my Greyfax deck and saw used a couple times, but extremely powerful. Lelith is kind of a natural counter to this guy because you've got that redeploy. So when you get the kill, a lot of the time the Canoness player is expecting to get a revenge kill against the power card that got that kill, which you're not going to see if it's already back in the player's hand. Ooh, that hurt. Well, that's not good. Go ahead and shoot him back. Is that the card I picked? I don't think it is. Oh well. Got some bugs going on here. It would be kind of worth it to lose this guy to bring down the Inquisitor. So that's a really scary piece. Especially since he's now going to kill my... Oh, woe is me. Yeah. This is great. So I'll use this to poach the dude on the left here. And then I will use the Inquisitor to get a bonus kill on Kodiaz and bounce my healer. I can take some damage on the Solitaire because I expect to lose him in the most beneficial way possible later. Look, hit me 3 times. There's Canoness for you. So if you do melee against her, she does get to hit you. I still haven't hit this guy with poison. And hit you multiple times, so it can get a little nuts. Let me put her down there and see what scary thing comes in the middle. It's not so bad. Alright. I'm gonna do a little melee back. I'm about to lose my Solitaire, but it should be in a beneficial way. Which is gonna take... He's gonna hit me back a bunch of times, but... Yeah. That's alright. Then we'll drop the healer, and I'm lucky that I got to deploy first there. We'll see what else he drops. So, I talked about her in my legendary review. That card. Ooh. He's got 2 more cards left. I want to save some poison to deal with Canoness herself, because she has shields. She's not the scariest enemy warlord, but she can hold down a middle line for a while because of that poison. That will bounce back my shield card, the cost of some damage. And then I can spray... Ooh, gross. But this card here is a really powerful melee attacker, and it getting endless is just absolutely insane. In general, but... oh, jeez. But particularly against... or in a Canoness deck. It's just such a huge boost. That's not the best place for my Crimson Hunter to be, but it's not the worst either, because I do... if I get the chance to kill that guy, I want to. Well, even if it costs me my power piece, that's not good. Now this is going to be fun. I'm going to play Lelith herself, and we're going to get her bounced. Oh no, I've done something terrible. Okay, I'm about to lose. So what I did here, so Lelith is going to attack first. Or actually... oh, I did such a terrible thing. Because I need to give Life Thief the kill so he gets bumped. But if I'd done melee... okay, I think this is still going to work, but it puts me in a real awkward position. If I'd done melee, Lelith would have killed this guy right here, and his death blow would have done enough damage to kill my Life Thief before it got to attack. And also triggered at least one bonus melee attack that could have messed me up real good. Yeah, that's going to hurt. So this is going to be interesting. I'm going to do something a little weird here. I'm going to use my Psychic attack to... this is going to hurt a lot. To take that down. Get that guy bounced, assuming he has enough bounces left. Did I check? Yes, he does. Excellent. Get that bonus. Okay, that could have been so much worse. It's really, really good that I got the bonus attack from Canoness herself, because she doesn't hit anywhere near as hard as this one does. But she hits hard enough to get lethal there, so I still lost this. I would still have a chance if I'd charged up my melee enough to do lethal through those shields, but I have not. So she got me. A couple unlucky deploys in the middle there, getting my power cards killed. Definitely did me in. So there you go. I have lost a game. Does that put my Eldar below 3k? Probably does. Because I was expected to win that. It did. That's a bummer. Oh well, I can get that back. It's still pretty early in the season. Alright, so I'm going to show off those Orc Warlords real quick. I want to show Zagstruk because I mentioned him. I expect to lose this one, but I did want to highlight how powerful of a warlord he is real quick before we jump into this. So again, his ability, whenever one of your cards readies, instead it attack against a 3k Lelith deck. Gah, not pulling any punches here. So I want to deploy KG. I'm going to drop my taunt in here because I want to take out some of these power cards. So this guy, it used to be this ready would fire right away. So this guy would just land for 84 damage, and from here I could have hit this guy on the left and nearly killed him on deploy before any cards had even really done anything. But since the change to timing, that's not the case anymore. Now I have to wait until deployment is complete to get him, and then everything goes in the deployment order, so he still gets to hit first and hit twice because he has both Furious Charge and Zagstruk's ability. So it's still extremely powerful, and now it's my turn, so I get to go again. So you see that Psyker was going to hit me with a Psychic attack on the drop, but I killed him first instead. And so that was a perfect example of why Zagstruk is scary. Bunch of free attacks. Both of my melee cards got to attack in melee without getting hit back in melee, which didn't matter because everything on the other side was dead, but that's just where his power really comes into play. And there we saw Lelith's come into play. And so this ready, he will attack at the end of deployment, and should be enough to kill him outright. 57, nice. Yeah, because he's got 59. So that's still really, really good. You get those free attacks. And then even here, both of my melee cards are going to attack for free and get another kill because of Zagstruk's ability. His ready, if I do a Psychic attack, that's his ready. In any other deck, it would give me a melee buff, but because I'm in Zagstruk, I trade the melee buff for another attack. Which, let me tell you, even trade... I did not expect that card to die to a melee attack from her, but I'm still up in cards, and a lot of what she's got at this point is pretty flimsy. And so here again, I really want to focus on taking down the cards that I don't want to see redeployed. So I don't want to see Life Thief drop down and pump a bunch of melee. And that should be a relatively easy matter of finishing off too. Yeah, okay. Still considering whether or not to keep this guy in the deck. I really like him. He just got to the level where I'm kind of comfortable running him. Wow, that was close. Okay, nice. So I'm going to pull Lelith herself, still against my very scary Warboss, but I will lose him. Which is fine. Because bonus, that lets me... So watch this mess. So, oh no. Her turn, so I don't get to. Never mind. But still, I'm fairly certain I got this. Which is great, because that's going to be a big trophy boost. But, so the timing thing makes a big difference, and definitely is a functional nerf to Zagstruk. Just because of that timing, it was such a big advantage being able to take out a card. So if you deployed second, enemy deploys one card, you could play two different cards that attack on deployment to then turn around and kill that card before it actually does anything. Now you can't do that. Just because deployment has to be complete before you do it. So you can do it if they don't have any more cards left, but it's still significantly harder than it was. Which is kind of good. That was a really cheesy thing to do. It was a bit of an edge case even for Zagstruk, but it was still very powerful when, for example, you needed to take out a couple cards before a taunt was dropped. You could do that, whereas now you can't. Or you could take out a Medicae before it actually... Well, that actually is not an issue anymore. Alright, so that was Zagstruk. Let me go ahead and pumped him right up. Nice. Let me show you Mozrog, who's my personal favorite Orc Warlord. You already saw in another video I did a review of Badruk. I'm a little bit shocked that in all these games I haven't seen a single Badruk. But he's definitely a very common Orc Warlord, and some of the other players I've spoken to, their top card... Ooh, that's unfortunate. Okay, well, I wanted some challenging matches. So Artemis, we talked about him. His on-deploy ability takes a chunk based on a random card's starting health. So both the cards I really want to play, I don't particularly want to play against that. And I want to take off some of these shields before I put something really scary against him. Because I'm going to lose some health for free here. So Medicae with my two power pieces, this is still good. But Mozrog tends to run expensive cards and is expensive himself, so he ends up with an undersized deck. So he's regularly outnumbered. So you really need to get the most out of those cards. So these two are fantastic. You can see this one ramps up more quickly in melee. This one ramps up more quickly in ranged. I just got this guy to that Berserk 3, so they're going to charge up their attacks real quick. But I have to be careful not to lose them. So if target acquired lands on them, or they end up across from something scary with Big Game Hunter, they can go down very quickly, and I need to make sure at least one of them makes it to the end game, or they trade positively enough that I can win the game without them. Blah. That's not what you want. Oh, that's not what you want either. Upside, downside. So that splits their attacks. So great, so that attack on drop hit one of the cards, the other attacks are going to hit the other, and he's going to do Psychic because he doesn't want to hit me in melee. Downside, he's got Tigurius there, who's a very powerful piece. What do I get if I do this? Versus melee. Ooh, so that will kill him. This isn't a whole lot better, so we're going to do ranged. And he's going to hit me for Psychic, but target acquired is going to turn off, so when he does Psychic, he's going to stop hitting my Black Death. Because that target acquired only lasts for 2 turns, and then he'll go back to hitting normally. I got a big bump in attack damage, so I'll be able to... Oh, no, really? Oof. Alright, AI, well played. That was a very smart play by the bot. I need that guy to die. And he's sitting on 1 shield, so I can hit him really hard. Excellent. I'm going to hold that taunt for a bit, just in case something awful happens. Which I may regret, because this guy's going to hit me back. Shrike is one of those legendary cards that got really powerful, especially in Artemis decks, because he gained that melee target acquired. So he's a hard-hitting melee card, because the other target acquired cards that Space Marines had before were either pretty weak or they were ranged. So there was a shooting card that has no melee attack that does target acquired, so to get a melee one. Or the other one was an 11-point all melee, it's not great. So like Shrike, already a very powerful card. Gaining target acquired is awesome for him. This also is not a great matchup because when I get to Artemis himself, he has Big Game Hunter. And so he's really going to be a threatening piece against both my Warlord and my kind of other... Oh man, beating me up over here. But it's not too bad. I took down Tigurius, I took down several of his power pieces. This taunt guy will let me get some health back on my Squigoth, and hopefully take this guy down. 2 shields remaining on that thing? Dang. But you see my attack is ramped up high enough that now I'm punching damage through shields, which is awesome. And this should keep my, this will keep my Squigoth alive long enough to get another attack, so get another bump of health, and another melee attack back. Awesome. An even bigger bonus, that guy survived. So this is going to be a great turn, and then we'll see if it's enough to actually win this. So my Squigoth, this is a thing. If you're able to tuck your power piece away and throw a taunt on the board, in a Mozrog deck, these really powerful pieces can come back swinging harder than ever. So he's going to have almost 200 health. No, I mean, not even close, but still good. Okay, I was hoping for a complete wipe, but that'll do. And Mozrog himself is epic. He's a somewhat newer warlord. I want to say he's the newest orc warlord. Could be wrong about that. So it takes a really long time to level up epic cards. Oh, that's not great. That's even less great. That's okay. So I got him. That was a dumb play by the AI, because my Squigoth on the left is swinging for like 140 damage. Yeah, 155. Bye! So that was closer than I wanted it to be, but still ended up not that close. So Mozrog, it's really unlikely to run into high level 1. Mine having Berserk level 2 is way up there, so I'm really proud to have that. But I was running him successfully in the 3k range before that. He's an insanely powerful warlord. Yeah, so let's see. So, I think I lost one game. I did, I lost that Lelith game. I'm going to play one more game with Lelith to see if I can make those points back up. Just to say it. And then just to talk about the ladder a little bit while I'm doing this. Again, I usually have my top 4 factions, try to hit 3k with them and keep them there. And then I will usually, depending on when in the season I get to that, this is early enough, I'm going to go ahead and pull in a 5th faction and try to get them up to 3k as well. So I can win some games, so I can play some games rather, and sort of gamble on getting higher trophy counts and not risk losing my score. Because if you have a deck at 3k and a deck at 299 or 299, and your 3k deck loses, it can only lose, they'll just switch places. So you lose a lot less if you have a backup deck. I love that. And so that's why I'm talking about bringing in a 5th faction, so I can kind of keep my ranking up in the ladder, but still kind of gamble a bit and try to do some more damage there. It could have been worse, could have been better. I'm going to have to be very careful with my Morgan Ra. Nice, glad I didn't deploy him against that big game hunter. But I also tend to rotate a bit. So Eldari has been my top faction for a long time. They're the ones that I really like to play. Oh, nice. Get some poison on him and kill him and bounce him. That was a great play. Awesome. Awesome. Because they're so powerful. Just because they were one of my first factions, the one I got very successful with very quickly. Ooh, do I risk it? I know he can get the kill. And because Lelith is such a powerful competitive piece. Those are all the reasons that Eldari is my top. Orcs are my number 2, largely because of Mozrog, because he's just so good. But then I'll sprinkle in some Snickrot and some Zagstruk as well. So it's just a really successful faction for me. Then my 3rd is usually Servants of the Emperor. Usually with... Ooh, interesting. Usually with Creed, but then I do a little mix of that. Oh, perfect. So my third is usually with Creed, or I'll do Greyfax. And then my fourth is I usually rotate. So I've tried recently to do the factions that I hadn't gotten up in that 3k range before. So at the moment I've got Space Marines up there. Oh, what do we do here? I'm going to do this. I'm going to risk it. We'll see how this turns out. I want to take that guy down as quickly as possible and take as little damage back. And if he does ranged, the Crimson Hunter is easily going to take this guy out. So I've got Space Marines in there. My Space Marines aren't very well leveled. Have not focused on them as much as I have other factions, so they probably are not going to keep up with the others. Ooh, I've already bounced my Crimson Hunter twice. That's a... see. So this worked out. So he's going to shoot me, but it is my turn, so I'll get to go ahead and shoot him back with a buff and should be comfortably able to take out his Crimson Hunter, which is a huge win. It will probably cost me, but not as much as it's going to cost him, and I've still got 5 cards in my deck, even if they're not my power pieces. That is a comfortable win for me, I think. Yeah, and even, yeah, Zephyrblade himself can't kill this. There we go, nice. Comfortable win. So yeah, trying Space Marines now. Last season I tried Necrons, before that I tried Tau. Each of them got just there, and especially Tau and Necrons. They didn't seem like that. Tau was really close. They were very close to my best faction. So that was a good one, but Necrons really just couldn't hang. At least not the cards I have, not the levels I have. I barely got to 3k and just sort of sat there and had my other factions make up the extra bit of trophies I needed to get to that top 6%. It worked, but it wasn't pretty. My usual one that I have in there as my fourth is going to be Chaos or Tyranids. Those are both extremely powerful factions that I really, really like. I love playing Tyranids, which is funny to say that since I haven't played any tonight, but I'll do another ladder one later, probably while I play the Turvagon, because she is my favorite Tyranid Warlord, or my most competitive Tyranid Warlord, and should be a really good one to show, because I know a lot of players don't compete with her at high levels, so it could be really useful to see that. So that was it. I've talked your head off enough. I tried to get a bunch of games in and get them really quick. Hopefully it wasn't too much. I'm about to check the recording time on this, but if you've stuck with me this long, I appreciate it, and I'll try to keep later streams shorter. But yeah, have a good night.